Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning from Argentina, from Buenos Aires, actually. It's raining cats and dogs here. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon. It's great to see so many teachers, so many colleagues from different parts of the world, all sharing the same interest, okay? Advancing learning and making the most of our lessons. And this is a fast forward session. Okay, hello Brazil, hello Lemmy, thank you. This is our fast forward session, and the idea is to revisit some of the concepts that our most prestigious authors have presented in their webinars. So as Will was saying, I would like to thank you all, but I would also like to point out that this is the result of collaborative work. And this is a concept that we are going to, again, revisit today. So a few minutes for 10 tips, and we will try to be as practical as possible. And here goes my first tip. My first tip is to create a positive environment. And this has to do with a can-do mindset, as Carol Reed says. Social and emotional learning is very important, is essential, I would say, because we are social and we are emotional beings. And we know that when we feel well, we do better. Nobody can learn when he or she feels angry or sad or has a stomach ache. So that is our first task, to discover how our students feel, to create a positive environment in our classrooms. And you know that creating a positive environment has to do with building up trust and building up relationships and building up confidence. And when I say building up relationships and building up trust, I don't mean just among the students. I also mean between the students and us teachers. And to build relationships, to build confidence, to build trust, we have to offer them opportunities. We have to include pair work. We have to give them the opportunity to feel safe when they make mistakes. And of course, this is also closely related to Zen, special educational needs, diversity, bullying. We have to address these issues. We have to observe carefully. We have to discover what they need to be able to offer them the opportunities to express how they feel, to express what they like and what they don't like. And that is very important. In this way, we are going to make sure we create a positive environment. And most our books in general, they guarantee this through the transitions between activities. That is very important. Now, the second tip, good morning, Brazil, good morning, Peru, okay. The second tip has to do with creating a safe environment that allows students to make mistakes. And the word mistake rings a bell, and it takes us to different concepts. It's okay to make mistakes. Mistakes are part of the learning process. Mistakes are like windows. When we open the window, we can see what is there. Mistakes show us at what stage of the learning process that child is, what extra push that child may need. So it's okay to make mistakes because mistakes are opportunities. But mistakes can be considered opportunities only when we have a growth mindset, as Sarah Hilliard said in her webinar. Now, also, I can say that mistakes make me think about what to correct and what not to correct, when to correct and when not to correct, and above all, how to correct. You know, this question of in public or individually, in a low voice, in front of everybody, maybe after the lesson, the way in which we correct, I think, and this is a personal opinion, is much more important than what or when. The way, how, a big smile, an encouraging attitude, that is so, so important. Now, my third tip has to do with connecting what we do in class, connecting what is in the book with the real world. Because after all, we want English, but English what for? We have to bear in mind the big picture, all the time the big picture, because these children that we have today in our classes are going to walk through my doors, are going to walk out of school, and are going to face this real world. So we have to make sure we offer them opportunities to put together what they are learning with this real world. And this implies exposing our students to diversity and to the real complexity of this modern world. And how do we do this? We do this when we make them act out, when we invite them to role play as if situations. We do this when we offer them the opportunity to work in pairs, in group, collaboratively, to, for example, for project work. This is in a way the real world, and the real world puts together the academic aspect, the linguistic aspect, and also the social skills. Because in this real world, we need other skills. We need to socialize, we need to have empathy, we need to be able to deal with difficult situations. That is the real world. And when we talk about the real world, it's neither Western nor Eastern, it's the whole thing. It's the global world. And so this takes me to the fact that we have to somehow address global world issues, sustainability, climate change, how to take care of the water we have, the little water that is left, how to take care of the environment, and that is UNESCO goals, okay? So we have to address all these things somehow, maybe directly from texts. Most of our books have got these materials, or indirectly, through a story, and we make them think, through a text that doesn't mention sustainability, but maybe that text comes with a picture to illustrate a certain situation, and we exploit that picture. So either directly or indirectly, the global world, the real world, has to be addressed, okay? And also, for example, through audio material, when we expose students to no longer RP, but to real English, the English they are likely to hear if they travel, okay? That's very important. The next tip has to do with scaffolding. And scaffolding is a very interesting concept. We have to scaffold because not everybody learns in the same way. Some children take longer, others require extra help. That is the notion of scaffolding. But scaffolding requires two very important things. The first one is planning. You cannot improvise. We have to, in order to scaffold properly, we need to plan. And to plan, we need to plan purposefully. And to plan purposefully, we need to know exactly what is it, exactly, mixed ability classes, exactly. But very often, when we think of mixed ability classes, I think we have to go deeper into that problem, in the sense that we need to observe our children carefully. We need to discover what is it they need, what is it they lack, what is it they like, so as to think of strategies to scaffold properly. We have to, according to their needs, plan meaningfully, purposefully. And the second aspect related to scaffolding is the concept of challenging, because actually the notion of scaffolding comes from Vygotsky and to this proximal development zone. So it's not just a question of facilitating. It's not just a question of making things easier for those learners who've got some kind of difficulty. It's not that. It's helping those children, but at the same time challenging them so that they can advance learning, so that they can go forward. It's like, as Lucy Crichton says, it's like putting some stepping stones on their way so they can start advancing. They can start moving forward gradually. But I have to make sure there is always another stone. It's not just one activity. It's not just facilitating. It's planning and facilitating and challenging at the same time. Two lines that go together, that should go together. We have, yes, Fernando, you're right. We have to encourage risk-taking. Yes, of course, very carefully, very thoughtfully, very conscientiously, and this is not easy. And of course, it's very demanding because we need time to plan, but this is what it's all about. And if you do that, you're going to have excellent results. Okay, thank you, Nathalie. Good. My fifth tip is then setting rules. Setting rules. And you know that we are social beings. We belong in a society, and in a society, we have rules. There are things we can do and things we mustn't do. And the classroom is a small society in a way. So rules have to do with what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And this has to be clear, and clear from the very beginning. Now, normally, we discuss these rules. We sometimes invite students to make a poster. We pin up the poster on a wall or on the back of the door. Now, what is important is that we should revisit those rules. We should revisit that poster regularly, because this question of setting rules is dynamic. If I need to pay attention to the same rules at the beginning of the school year, and I have to go back every now and then and stick to the same rules at the very end of the year, maybe that means we are not making progress. Maybe that means we are not advancing. This is dynamic. At some point, my students have to become aware of these rules. They have to learn to respect those rules more naturally, so that maybe we can discuss if we can add one or two new rules and maybe get rid of the first two that they have already learned and they have already internalized. So remembering that setting rules is essential, but also it should be dynamic. Also, every time there is a mistake, there is a difficulty, there is a difficult situation, there is a conflict, we should go back to that poster and point to that rule that is there. With the little ones, it may be just icons, pictures. With the upper forms, maybe we produce something more, a little bit more complex with more text. But what matters is that everybody should be aware of this. It's a question of collaborative work. We set the rules together, and the rules have to be applicable, logical. I cannot write a set of rules that I know we will not be able to obey. It's only a question of common sense, right? So again, I think it's very important to pay attention to this, because we are we are educating global citizens. And again, if that child is going to leave school and go out into the real world, he's going to face rules and difficult situations. So this is also a very important part of what UNESCO says in the Guide for Global Citizenship. Being a global citizen implies three different domains. It's got an academic domain, it's got a social and emotional domain, and it also has a behavioral domain. So you see how it's not just the language and the knowledge, the academic knowledge that matters, but it's all these things that are important. Exactly. And of course, we have to respect the rules ourselves, definitely. So my next tip, my next piece of advice has to do with setting routines. You know that we need routines. Routines clarify things. Routines, in a way, help children internalize learning. Now, it's not a question of being theoretical about it. We teach routines through our own work. in a practical way. We teach routines, for example, showing the way we arrive punctually, the way we greet them and the way we want them to greet us and the way we want them or we expect them to greet one another. For example, what about homework? Do we correct homework at the beginning of the lesson orally, or are they expected to hand in homework in a sheet of paper? So maybe I need to appoint a helper every class, every day to collect those sheets of paper. That is a routine, and I need to make that clear. What about games? Do I use games as a kind of reward? Do I use games at certain moments in my lesson? Do I always start with a game in the warm-up? Do I use a game always at the end as some kind of relaxation activity? And also considering the advancing learning global skills, this question of, well-being, I need brain breaks. How often? When? What kind? Am I going to use breathing exercises to make everybody relax? Or maybe I choose a more academic brain break, like a game. That's our choice. And that sets our routine. But the routine is there. And it's very important that it should be there. Also, routines have to do with this question of global citizenship as well, links between the school, myself in this case, the teacher, and the family, and also the school, the English lesson, and the community. Establishing these links, that is very important for the student and for the community. And we should always bear in mind the bigger picture. We are educating citizens for the world, not just for the classroom, not just for the school. Hello, Russia, good. And routines are essential for management. Yes, that's very good, Fernando, you are right. Yes, they help us to manage groups. They help us to manage difficult groups. And sometimes the routines invite other learners to help us manage difficult learners. Right, you're right. So we come to the seventh tip, that is include more stories. And I would add something. It's not just include more stories, but exploit, make the most of those stories. Hello, Peru, yes. Most of our books, all I would say, have got stories. But it's not only a question of reading the story that is in the book or listening to the story that is in the book. It has to do again with a routine, with going beyond the book. It has to do with reading to them, reading to the children as much as possible, maybe inviting them to perhaps sit on the floor, on a mat, on a cushion, or having a very special quiet place where we go to enjoy reading. Maybe your school has got a lovely garden with a big tree and we can sit under the tree to enjoy a reading session. It's good to invite parents to buy books. It's good to show them, if we have a library at school, to show them we have a lot of books they can choose from. It's related to encouraging them to read, encouraging them to enjoy reading so that they develop a love of reading for the future, okay? And Carol Reed, in her webinar about global skills, gives excellent examples, very practical examples about how to make the most of a story, acting it out, using puppets, using body language, ending up in a project that is absolutely fantastic. And it's important to show that, or to highlight that stories have got a lot of values. On the one hand, yes, they integrate the grammar and the vocabulary we are teaching. Also, stories put together, they bridge the gap between the real world and the fantasy world. Stories allow the child to fly away from reality and to express themselves. And that is very important. But also, stories are important because you know that they are the basis for mathematical thinking. Stories have got a beginning, a development or middle part, and an ending, and we cannot change the order. And that is mathematics. So you see that stories are not important, essential. So if you want to make the most of stories, include, exploit, and revisit. That is, maybe after 1 or 2 units, you go back to story number 1. And this time you can add, for example, a character, you can change the ending, you can add some parts. And that is great because your students are going to remember and internalize and play with the language. Also, in order to exploit, in order to make the most of a story, maybe we can make connections, we can play with rhymes, we can include art, music, dancing. And this is great because it gives us the bigger picture. It shows us real use of the language. And we come to tip number 8, and now we have to rush a little bit. Tip number 8 is to make the most of cooperative learning. And I said at the beginning, this is the result of cooperative learning. We got together on Zoom, people from different parts of the world, everybody trying to do their best. Okay, and this is it, cooperative learning. All books have got pair work and group work. But again, the routine is there. Am I going to just make Peter work with Mary just because they are sitting one next to the other? No, it's good to change the organization, to give everybody the chance to work with everybody else so that they develop the other skills, the bigger picture, the social skills, the life skills. Now, to develop cooperative learning has different aspects included. One has to do with the language that you need to collaborate, the language that you need, which is spontaneous, which is natural, which probably goes a little bit beyond the grammar and vocabulary in the unit. So we have to be very careful to make sure we provide that language so that students can make the most of cooperative learning. Then remembering to give everybody the opportunity to work with everybody else, and the importance of play. When we think about young learners, we think about play, and cooperative play has shown to be very, very important for the development of life skills. We know through psychology, we know that collaborative games lead to less aggression, lead to the development of social skills, lead to the development of empathy. And this is what we want. So let's make them play collaboratively. Okay, right, it's a mode of work, right? It's a choice, okay? But I think it's a very interesting and very useful choice, right? And something important when you think about cooperative learning is that it doesn't grow on trees. We have to make sure we plan. We have to make sure we plan purposefully. We have to make sure we give clear instructions, all right? And we have to make sure we guarantee scaffolding for those who need it. And we come to tip number 9, which is let us allow learners to communicate and to explore. Communicate means we have to go beyond accuracy. Grammar is important, vocabulary is important, because in most cases we are talking about a foreign language, English is a foreign language, but communication skills are essential. English is to be spoken, English is to be used, and for that we need other things, okay? So we want to offer our students the chance to communicate more freely, not just to fill in the blanks, not just to put the verbs in brackets into the correct form. And for this, there has to be a balance between the 4 skills, between the productive and the receptive skills. And there has to be a balance between fluency and accuracy in our aims, again, when we plan. We have to make sure that we include these opportunities when we plan. Grammar is important, but when children want to speak, they don't think in grammar terms. They think in terms of meaning, in terms of interests, in terms of expressions, okay? So perhaps the most useful way is to work to teach grammar in an inductive way, to make them discover the grammar from a context, from a story, from sentences that are meaningful to them. And finally, last but not least, as students write in their essays, making learning as meaningful as possible. And this, I think, is a summary of everything we have said. It's a way of teaching, making our teaching meaningful so that their learning is meaningful. And for this, we have to remember basic principles: motivating material, bringing culture into the classroom, yes, but at the same time offering them opportunities to speak about and to reflect on their own culture, to bridge the gap, to make connections. Offering visual and audio support all the time. Remember, we learn in a multi-sensory way. And as Salowa is saying, yes, there is no best method. We have to discover our own method. These are just tips, okay? And some may work better for you in each particular case than others, okay? Our activities, okay, manageable, attainable, always remembering collaborative work, group work, pair work, meaningful work, and always offering personalization. Each child is a world. Each child has his or her needs, and these are our 10 tips, okay? Create a positive environment, create a safe environment for making mistakes, let's not get angry, connect to the real world, scaffold, set rules, set routines, include and exploit stories, make the most of cooperative learning, allow learners to encourage learners to communicate and go beyond, explore, and everything has to be meaningful. Okay? I don't know if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, LA. Thank you so much. Can you see and hear me okay?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Will. Thank you, everybody. Yes, I don't know if there are any questions, Will.
We have got a couple of questions. We've got probably just time for one.
Okay.
So, hold on, let me just choose one. What can we do to help students become aware of their learning process and progress? What are the best ways to make sure that they know what's happening to them?
I think the best way is not to focus on mistakes, but to encourage them and to just be open about it. Mention. We tend naturally to correct mistakes and to overlook the good things, okay? So it's good to say, look, you've copied in a, I don't know, tidily today, or this looks neater than what you did yesterday, or look, you finished today, well done. Encourage those very, very small things, very small steps they make. They mean a lot.
Excellent. Thank you so much, LA. And can I just also say thank you very much. I know you put a lot of work into putting these tips together. It took a long time, I think, to go through a lot of the webinars and to watch them all. I hope you enjoyed it, but it just took a lot of time of yours, and I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for doing that for everyone.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye, LA. So can I invite, please, the wonderful Grzegorz Spivak. There he is. There he is. Good day, Greg.
Okay.
Good day again. So this is Greg's second outing with us today. He was very kind enough to do the morning one, and he's also doing this one in the afternoon, UK morning. So thanks a lot, Greg. You all ready to go?
Yeah, I am indeed.
Cool. I'm going to stop sharing and have a lovely session. See you later.
And my segment is teenagers. I'm going to cheat a little bit with this no PowerPoint policy, in that I have actually printed out the 10 tips on a separate sheets of paper, so I will be flashing them at you as we go along. So that's the first bit. The second, and in the way of sort of introducing my segment, I hope that you are as impressed as I am with Alejandra's phenomenal, super energetic introduction on young learners. And you know, apart from being really genuinely humbled by such a fantastic teacherly act, I also wanted to say that there's going to be a lot of overlap between the two of us, and perhaps also between the first two and the third session where Janse comes on. And the reason is, of course, that a lot of those suggestions that we lifted of our experts within season 4 really apply across the board and are not necessarily specific to any particular age group. So I hope that what you heard from Alejandra and what you're going to hear from me now will genuinely encourage you to go back, or maybe go for the first time, to those fantastic resources that we have collected over the whole of season 4, and truly take advantage of them, in a sense, no matter which age group you happen to be teaching. And the third point, before I begin properly, is that again, I was fascinated listening to Alejandra just a while back. In that, the sequence that I am to present, in a sense, takes on very similar issues, but offers a slightly different sequence. So I hope you will be interested to compare those two approaches in what is to come. Okay, so enough in way of introductions. Let's begin properly. My first tip that I would like to offer this afternoon is that to me, it all begins with the big picture, which really we should not forget in everything we do with those teenagers. Now, this idea of a big picture got lifted, in my case, off a most wonderful blog post written by Matthew Hayes in the One Stop English series. And of course, you can find this in our season 4 archive, along with all the other resources. In that blog post, which is actually called Advancing Learning Global Citizenship Education in the ELT Classroom, Matthew says that there is something that we might want to feel in a sense, everything that we do behind classroom doors, and that is a higher level of purpose for education, one which cannot really be addressed by only the traditional divisions into curriculum subjects, examinations, or testing standards. This higher level of purpose, in Matthew's view, is ultimately to educate global citizens, lofty and ambitious as this may sound. He stresses this word citizen in that blog post, saying that the word is fantastic because it codes not just the rights of a person, but also, and crucially, responsibilities of that person. Matthew draws on a number of historical documents as his background, and perhaps the most important of them, and that's so timely, is the UN Declaration on Human Rights, published right after the Second World War, which, I will quote, called for education to promote understanding, tolerance, and friendship amongst nations, all nations. And, you know, experiencing what we are experiencing today, with the events unraveling just across from where I live, from the Polish-Ukrainian border, this feels so appropriate and so timely and so important that I thought I really need to begin with this. And if you are thinking that this is indeed a little lofty to be made operational behind our classroom doors, then the next 9 tips that I have prepared, I hope will persuade you that it can indeed be made a bit more operational. Speaking of which, tip number 2 is this: avoid the single narrative, and as you can see, broaden the scope of topics, ideas, themes that you cover. And again, crucial, it's absolutely crucial that we expose those youngsters in particular to the true diversity and complexity of the world that those teenagers will, with luck, soon inherit from us. As Hayes says, it is about creating a truly global orientation, not only Western or Eastern, as the case may be. If you need any further inspiration for this, one absolutely phenomenal place to go is a phenomenal TED talk by the novelist Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie with a great title, The Dangers of a Single Story. You know, that title gave rise to the name of the second tip today, quite obviously. And if you're thinking, okay, but how can I embrace this diversity in practice? Well, the answer, arguably, is that our greatest ally as language teachers is a modern course book series informed of and sensitive to these global challenges, concerns, and opportunities. And I'd like to draw your attention to the very wording of some of the recent titles of the courses published by Macmillan. The global stage one, or get involved. Surely that this cannot just be a coincidence. There's a very obvious message at stake, I think. And to finish off with this tip, I think that it's fair to say that teaching English this decade, you know, with its status as a global lingua franca, is, or at least should be, so much more than just transmitting purely linguistic skills. And this brings me to tip number 3, which is this one. Okay, get our teenage students to genuinely care about their world. And when I say their world, I mean, of course, the world that will soon be theirs. So I am really hoping as an educator for my teenage learners' active involvement, so that truly continues to be a world to educate young people about in years to come. For this, there is, of course, a very comprehensive framework available. Alejandra already mentioned it, and I will repeat, the UN Sustainable Development Goals framework. And it's a wonderful document for any educator, really. If you look at the range of issues there, it's truly overwhelming. You know, anything ranging from sustaining life on land and water, fighting climate change, responsible consumption, stopping hunger, fighting poverty, reducing inequality, developing clean energy sources, producing or maintaining sustainable cities and communities. Again, very, very lofty, wide scope. Can we make this at all more accessible, accessible to young people? I love a quote from a comment from Salua now, matching learning to reality. That's a fantastic way of saying this, or what Maria says now, real world issues. Indeed. Now, if you're thinking, can we make them a bit more accessible to those youngsters? I think one great place to go and inspire yourselves is Harry Waters's phenomenal webinar, in which he, if you like, translated the original Sustainable Development Goals framework into this beautiful infographic in the form of a layer cake, which lists all the original goals, but organizes them in such a way that they can perhaps form a type of overall picture that we will relate various classroom activities to. And this brings me, I hope, rather neatly into tip number 4, which is that while it's great to think global, it's equally great, or perhaps even greater, to act local. And that's where our great teenage classrooms, again, have a wonderful, potentially a wonderful role to play. Again, at an operational level, what this is about is giving our teenagers a sense of purpose, but not only a declarative sense of purpose, you know, I care about the world type of thing, but a sense of urgency, which requires some sort of action. be it small scale and local, but one which reflects for real the fact that they are concerned. And the great thing is, again, that within a modern language, foreign language curriculum, if you only sharpen your antennae, it really isn't a question of either or. So, either teach grammar or teach about the world. No, well, actually you teach grammar through the world, which actually Alejandra also said. From that perspective, just about any topic is potentially a springboard for this kind of deeper, more sensitive thinking and attitude building. You think about eating habits, daily routines, shopping, travel, you name it. You can talk about it at a very superficial level, or you can encourage youngsters to think, as Fernando now says, from micro to macro. That's a beautiful one. And I can see Carla as well, act local, which is for her to encourage the teens to make the difference by their actions. That's a beautiful way of putting it. In fact, I couldn't have put it better myself. What I think is important, however, is that as language teachers, we can create conditions for those youngsters to really deploy those attitudes through meaningful use of language, foreign language in this case. So, our role is to provide them with appropriate tools, including linguistic ones, with which we will be able to carry out those local activities. Speaking of carrying out activities, it's about having the right set of skills to be able to do it, is it not? And that brings me to my tip number 5, which is this one. Okay, so now let's try and look at modern skills through the lens of those global issues and global skills. And, what are they? Again, if you bring them down to an operational in-class level, those are the skills of problem solving, communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, known either as global skills or by any other recent names such as 21st century skills, or maybe the 4 C's of education, or life skills. The label, in a sense, is not as important as is the kind of feeling, again, that potentially, at least, though their development is a wonderful opportunity to mesh the development of linguistic skills and those super important global or super skills. And who better to help students with than a wonderful language teacher again? If you're looking for practical ideas there, 2 references that I would like to make. One is a wonderful session by Dave Spencer on collaborative learning, and the other is Anna Husper's equally great session on problem solving. David, for instance, emphasizes beautifully the fact that when you work on something as a team, then surely the main objective at the end of the day is to produce an excellent piece of work, right? This is what gives you pride in what you've done, and that's a wonderful feeling. But before this can happen, your teens will have a natural chance, an opportunity to experience for real what it means, for instance, to divide up workload in a fair manner. And to do so, they will need to negotiate, that is, to genuinely interact. And this means meaningful, targeted use of language. And again, with luck, given that this is an English classroom, the target language. Similarly, doing projects successfully will teach them how to give and accept constructive criticism. After all, fantastic quality doesn't just happen like that, right? You need to go through a series of approximations and talk about it, right, in order to improve it every time, which again, when I say talk about it, which naturally facilitates targeted, meaningful use of English. For Anne Hasper's session, one great point that she makes about problem solving, remember, is that while it's a very obvious life skill, we all need to solve problems beyond the classroom, the skill itself is not something we are born with. So you need to learn it, which means we might want to teach it, or at least help our learners learn it. Because as she says, and this is another wonderful point, it's not about transmitting knowledge, spoon feeding it. She quotes E.M. Foster, the wonderful quote about knowledge transmission, which is that if you spoon feed only, then the only thing that you teach people is the shape of the spoon. And in contrast, if you want to develop a skill, you probably need a framework, a strategy. And she does offer such a strategy. She says you start by identifying a problem. Once you've identified this, you move on to generating solutions. Once this is in place, you present the solutions to a class. And then once the solutions are presented, a range of solutions, you evaluate their relative impact on an audience. All of this, do I have to say, will require, again, meaningful, targeted use of language. I'm looking at the chat, and Fernando again has a wonderful quote, which is that skills that help us ponder on issues and produce change through group work and cooperation. Absolutely. And Nada says now knowledge is triggered and the competence to embrace it is already there. That's a beautiful one. Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks very much for that. So moving on, if you're thinking, okay, so collaborative work is important, problem solving is important, but are there any types of activities that will naturally promote it? Well, the answer is, of course there are. And this is tip number 6, which, as you can see, sings praise of project work specifically. It's sort of interesting. When I rewatched those wonderful webinars in season 4, I noticed that virtually all of our webinarists seem to sing praise of project work. Anne Hasper, Dave Spencer, Laura Patsko, and Harry Waters in all of their sessions. And, you know, perhaps it's not so surprising, because if you think about it, project work of all activity types really ticks all those wonderful boxes. The box for genuine collaboration, for meaningful communication, for spoken interaction, and for dealing with criticism, to name but a few. And perhaps last but not least, projects, if properly selected and managed, potentially bring a sense of cohesion and coherence, consistency to what you do with those teenagers over a course of a unit. While I'm saying this, it's probably fair to say that in order to properly select, it will be very difficult to try and search for these appropriate projects in the open internet, for instance. Much better to fall back on a wonderful project work sensitive modern course, such as, for instance, Macmillan's Get Involved, which again reappeared several times throughout season 4 webinars. So great content which will inspire great in-class processes, I think, is really the key. So Anna kind of amplifies that too in the chat, saying that to find the correct project, the appropriate project, is really the question. But you know, talking about content, content is fundamentally important, but so is the fact that content isn't all. And this is my tip number 7. Yes, let's teach from a wonderful course book, but let's not teach the course book. It's a major post-pandemic takeaway, I think. You know, the pandemic has taught us that education is a lot less about content and a lot more about the people involved. And you know, again, there's wonderful, very recent research, all of which tends to cluster around the same idea. In-class relations, meaningful personal connection are absolutely fundamental, prerequisite, in fact, for any kind of success in an online environment. This is what Laura Patsko said in her great webinar on the topic. But if you think about it, they are really indispensable for any kind of education, face-to-face, online, or hybrid. And one specific consequence of this is the ever-increasing role of quality corrective feedback that will inform the learner of where they are and where we want them to go. And this, of course, is only one aspect of something even larger, and that is of formative assessment technique, which I think, again, have been corroborated fantastically throughout the pandemic. Tip number 8, kind of, again, naturally flowing from the former 7, is this one. Again, I hope that you will relate to this instantly, particularly having had the experience of the pandemic for the last 2 years or so. But isn't it true that the English language classroom provides a perfect context for which we can actually raise awareness about diversity, equity, and inclusion? Again, a lot of these ideas were already present in what Alejandra said. We can analyze bias and start to think collectively about what we can do to redress it. A wonderful quote from Zarina Subhan's webinar: language can very much exclude or include people. A great one, isn't it? Stayed with me and probably will forever. And thinking about your language classroom now, isn't it a wonderful, potentially a wonderful place to raise awareness of bias, to help students identify their own biases, not just talk about other people's biases, tackle the idea of stereotypes. Prabha now says, develop inclusive classrooms. Absolutely. Look for practical solutions to reduce prejudice and stereotyping. All of this, again, not in a sense of instead, but through a meaningful use of the language. And this brings me, again, I hope quite naturally, to my tip number 9, which is that one of the great things that we can try to achieve as educators, not just as language teachers, is to genuinely promote well-being and a positive classroom environment. Again, the pandemic has really highlighted that need, but as Laura Patsko says, it's always been there and will always be there, whether we are in a Zoom situation or face-to-face or hybrid. And I have a wonderful quote that I lifted from that webinar. She says, we need to acknowledge that when students come to class, they are bringing all of themselves, not just a learner. It's also a person with lots of things happening in their lives, lots of things on their minds. And I think this is just such a wonderful educator talking to us. And, with teens in particular, and that perhaps is one area where teens are really distinct from young learners. Teens are genuinely going through a complicated and often difficult physical and emotional stage as they transition from childhood to adulthood. And that will have key implications for how they relate to themselves and others. And this, of course, will have profound effects on what goes on in the classroom, for better or for worse. I'm again looking at the chat, and you're just making all kinds of phenomenal, wonderful comments. But of course, we all agree that it should not just be at a declarative level. It should be a menu of very concrete, practical activities that will focus on genuinely promoting students' well-being, and perhaps by extension our own as well. And it's only those and regular use that will boost students' confidence, self-esteem, empathy, and tolerance for others. A couple of ideas from Laura, if I may. One is such a simple idea, which is just include very frequent, regular check-ins. Make sure they are really there emotionally. For instance, you could get teens to score how they are feeling on a given day, whether online or offline. Are they happy? Are they excited? Are they sleepy? Are they sad? This is a beautiful, natural way to relate to certain recently studied vocabulary, perhaps, right? Speaking of vocabulary, you could also pick a code word, like a secret code word for a given lesson or day. And every time you use that word and your students hear it, they can react. For instance, they can type that word into the chat box if they are online, or if they are face-to-face, they can maybe do a thumbs up, or raise their hands or, stand up, whatever the gesture is immaterial. What matters is the fact that with it, you are able to kind of mentally wake them up. And perhaps last but not least, something that I am about to do with you guys as well is a 20-20-20 rule, okay? As the name suggests, it should happen about every 20 minutes, according to Laura Pascoe. So since I've been talking for about 20 minutes, let's do it, okay? So it's 20 minutes have gone. So now I'm going to give you 20 seconds only, I'll count, okay? 20 seconds to look away from the screen. Don't look at me, okay? I'll do 3, 2, 1 in a sec. You look away, and now that's the third 20, okay? Look and focus on something which is about 20 feet away, okay? About 6 meters away. Could be a tree, a flower, okay? Have you picked it up? Somewhere in something in your flat or house. Pick on an object, not the screen, away. And in a moment, let's just look at it for 20 seconds. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we are back. Okay, notice zero preparation, no extra materials or handouts needed, but a chance to acknowledge the fact that people get tired, their eyes get tired. So let's give everyone a break. Let's persuade them that we care about how they feel. Yeah, it's just a lovely idea. Thank you, Amalia and Natalia. It's a simple but lovely one. And, to finish off, my tip number 10, okay, important that this is not treated as an optional extra, something that you do every 5 weeks, because then of course it does not really matter. Okay, before we can teach them anything at all, let's make sure they feel we truly care about them as human beings, and let's make those well-being moments an integral part of every lesson. Thank you very much. That's the 10 tips from me. I hope that they've made some sense for you guys.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Greg. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. And the tips, thank you very much. The 10 tips, if anybody wants to take a quick snapshot, they are now on the slide.
Excellent. That's so great, Greg. Just again, just an absolutely wonderful sum up of teenagers and what they need in that classroom, I think. I mean, of course, throughout the season, there were all sorts of micro pieces of advice within those tips that you just said. So
the power of something concrete and doable, right? Which, the thing that I love about it is that a lot of those best ideas really do not require a huge amount of preparation, or in fact, no preparation at all, but they do require a certain sensitivity, right? Attention, mindfulness, right?
A shift in the mindset, perhaps, a shift in the way of just thinking about certain things. And I mean, the mindfulness practice you just gave there, Greg, was just a really good example of how all you need to do is remember to include that in the class.
Exactly.
That's kind of all that's required. I mean, I just practice that, and I can really tell, and I've practiced that as much as I can. I mean, sometimes things get in the way, don't they? Sort of you're in the flow of your work, and you forget to do these things. But as a general rule, taking yourself away every X amount of time.
This other one with the magic word, I did not have a chance to give it justice. But if you try it with your learners, if you need kind of to observe the procedure, go back and watch Laura Pascoe's webinar, which was absolutely outstanding. But if you do it with your learners, you'll just see the wonderful effect. It's so much easier to concentrate on the overall thing. If you have this just extra little simple challenge that you can attend to. And I think that this is really lovely.
Completely agree, Greg. Thanks so much. Thank you so much for all the time you put into today and for preparing the tips again. You're
can
awesome.
I just say huge thanks to the wonderful participants today who've been so incredibly active throughout. And, in a sense, you guys kind of did that session for me. All I needed to do was just lift the wonderful comments.
Thanks a lot, Greg.
Thanks,
Okay, so can I invite Janza? Janza, are you there? Can you hear me? Somewhere in the world of the internet. Hi, Janza. How are you?
Great, wonderful.
Great, good stuff. Well, it's time to start right now. Are you ready? Good to go?
Yeah, of course. So, hello, everybody. How are you? I see so many people here, so many countries, different countries. Where are you from, guys? I see some people from Argentina. I saw some people from Peru. Hello, Peru. Anybody from Turkey, Brazil, Azerbaijan? Wonderful. Well, anybody from Mexico? Because I'm in Mexico, so I'm saying good morning from Mexico. Ukraine. Hello, Ecuador, Spain. Wonderful. Okay, well, I hope that you're ready for today's tips. And well, it was wonderful. Gregor's and Alejandra's tips were wonderful. And I hope that you enjoy, today's session also with the tips that I prepared for you, which, let me tell you, was a challenge for me. It was a very big challenge for me because there were so many things, so much material, so many webinars. So I had to choose just 10, and it was pretty hard. So, to start, I would like please to do a similar activity just as Gregor's. And I would like you to just close your eyes for just a few seconds and try to imagine and try to remember the last time you were motivated, guys. What was the last time you were motivated? Please, let's close our eyes just for a few seconds and remember when you were motivated because you got a new job, because you had a new baby, a new love. I don't know, you accomplished a goal. Just for some seconds, try to remember. Okay, all right, let's open our eyes. And please let me know in the chat, how did you feel? How do you feel remembering salary raise? Yeah, of course. How do you feel about remembering? And you got it right. You felt great. Avelana, awakened. I felt glad, peaceful, happily motivated. Okay, good. Why did I do that? Because, well, I wanted to start today's session with my first tip. So remember, we're going to see 10 tips. So I'm going to start the session with today's tip. Today's tip is motivate students in online sessions, offline or online, hybrid, of course. Well, this was taken from Teaching and Motivating Adult Learners on Online Sessions with Rona Snelling, which, by the way, is one of our webinar presenters, and also she is always giving us wonderful tips, especially for adults. You feel happy, you feel thrilled. Well, why am I saying this? Because definitely, well, a highly motivated student, I don't know if you agree with me, but they can learn whatever they want, even without a course, even without a class, even without a teacher. If your students are motivated, they can learn on their own. I don't know if you agree with me. The only thing that we have to do as teachers is to become really facilitators, no? Because resources are everywhere. They can find resources in videos, they can find resources in articles, they can find resources in books, they can find information in different people, no? When they're motivated, they also call some friends, some relatives. And well, as facilitators, what we should do is always concentrate and create interest. What I believe is that we must concentrate a lot more on creating interest and providing students with the tools they need in order to achieve their goals, rather than just providing information. Because sometimes when we provide information, well, probably if they're not so motivated, they're not going to assimilate everything that we're saying. So that's what I believe that it could be a very good tip for you. So for instance, we have, you know, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And of course, we should, when we plan our classes, we should make balanced activities. We should take into account their learning styles. We should take into account their motivations one important thing about this is that you should know your students. You should know what they like. You should know what they listen to. You should know what they read about. You should know the kind of interest, like in movies, or the kind of jobs, the kind of hobbies they have. Because if you get to know your students, I don't know if you agree with me, but if you do know your students, then you're going to be able to motivate them. In fact, your classes are going to be more personalized. In fact, your activities are going to be more appealing for them. And by the way, you're going to be able to carry on with very special classes, very smooth classes, and you're not going to be looking at your watch all the time. You're going to be enjoying your classes. They're going to be enjoying your classes. So that's one of the tips that I wanted to give you, which was the first tip. And well, let me go to the second tip. The second tip that I want to share for you, which is use visible thinking routines to analyze images and increase awareness of inclusion in teaching materials. This was taken from Education for Sustainable Development and Citizenship program from our One Stop English webpage for teachers. I hope that you know it. If you don't, I'm inviting you to go and check it. All right. So I don't know if you have worked with visible thinking routines, but if you haven't, I recommend that you start doing it. For example, talking about inclusion. Inclusion in general terms, it means ensuring that every student, no matter what their individual needs, no matter what their barriers are to learning, they have equal access to learning and they have the same opportunities so they can achieve their goals. That is inclusion, right? So there are many ways to get inclusion in our classes. There are many ways that we can do this. I know you guys, you tried your best to do this because I know some of you and I know that you do it. And well, this is another tip that we want to give, right? Which is use visible thinking routines from Harvard University Project Zero. And in here, what we can do is we can use these routines every now and then, and by using these routines, by applying these questions, because there are some questions that I want to tell you about. So you can have, for example, some images, as Saluha was saying here in the chat, visual aids, right? And then you can take into account all your students' points of views, right? You can use images, and the purpose of this is that you can take into account all the point of views, that you respect their opinions, and also that your students are going to probably debate about it. So we are going to encourage inclusion, we're going to encourage empathy, and we're going to see all their different points of views, perspectives, and everything that they think about. For example, this is an exercise called Step Inside. In this Harvard University site, you can also check it. And the first thing that you have to know is, for example, you have an image of a person. You show an image of a person, and then you can ask questions like this one. No? What can the person perceive? No? What can you think about the person? What do you think he's doing? What do you think he's thinking? Another question could be, what might the person know about, or what might the person believe? Another question would be, what might the person care about? What do you think that the person is doing, is going to do? I don't know, stuff like that. And by that, what you're going to do is you're going to raise awareness of inclusion, also empathy, and you're going to promote, of course, communication in class. So that's another tip. Another tip that I want to give, this is tip number 3, which is exploit your students' pre-existing knowledge. This was also by Rona Snelling, and it was from the webinar Global Skills and the Classroom. And well, here Rona is going to explain how to activate the 4 global skills, which are thinking, learning, working, and social skills. So here we need to pay attention to the word activate. We need to activate your students' schemata. We need to activate your students' previous knowledge. Why? I don't know if you agree with me, but if we take into account what they already know, then what we're going to present, it's going to be a lot easier. Another advantage is some students believe learning a language, in this case English, is difficult. But if we activate the previous knowledge, they're not going to be so difficult because they already know something. That's a fact. No matter what level your students have, they already know some words in English, whether because they studied a little bit of English or because some brand names are in English or some expressions in their country, in your countries are in English, whatever. So what I recommend is we always need to exploit, activate previous knowledge, and then it's a perfect lead-in for what is going to happen then. No, it's the perfect way to go through the session. It's a perfect go-to exactly to do this scaffolding, Maya, and it's a perfect example of how to have a very smooth transition between activities. When we activate our students' knowledge, we also are remembering or recalling things that we saw in previous classes. So it's another way of reviewing some of the topics. So that's one of my tips. I don't know if you agree with me. Yes, Miranda says yes, I agree with you. All right. So let me move now to tip number 4. Tip number 4, which is use feedback to make learners realize their progress, especially with adults. I believe this is essential. I was a teacher in university and high school, and I saw that this was essential for them. This was taken from Feedback That Empowers from Katerina Protsenko. And I don't know if you agree with me, but especially with adults, they need to know they are advancing, they need to know their progress, and also they need feedback. They need feedback from sometimes the platforms, why not? Sometimes the books, because they are autonomous, they learn a lot, but also they need feedback from the teacher, they need feedback from other students, and feedback is essential. It's essential part of learning, but it's not just error correction. We need to take into account many different aspects, like the intra and interpersonal aspects. We need to take into account also the tasks that we're developing. We need also to take into account the students' effort. That's very important, to praise your students, to tell them you accomplished the goal, to tell them you did well, so that they realize that when they started the course, they were in one place talking about learning a language. But now, with 1 month, 2 months, half a year, of course that they accomplished some goals. Of course that they now learned a lot more. So we need to take into account the students' effort. We need to praise, as Andrea is saying here, the challenge and emotional aspects, no? And I don't know if you agree with me, but especially in this 2022, after 2 years of what has happened, of the lockdown, the pandemic, all these difficult times that we're living in. So it's very, very important to take into account also, and to include in this part of feedback, to include the social emotional learning. Praise the students, as some people here are saying, and of course trying to tell the students all the things that they're doing correct and all the things that they can change and they can go for more. Let me go and let me move to tip number 5. Tip number 5, which is personalized tasks to focus on what students really need to make learning meaningful. Also very important to personalize the tasks, to personalize the activities. I don't know if you agree with me, but if you're going to learn something and that thing that you're learning does not apply in your life, you easily forget. What do you think, guys? If what you're learning, no matter what you're learning in school, you're learning a new whatever, but if you don't use it, or if it doesn't it's not a part of what you do in your daily life, or if you don't see the point on learning something. That happened to me a little bit with some mathematics courses and some stuff like that. I used to ask my teacher, why do I need to learn this, or how am I going to apply it in life, right? So I think that personalization is something essential in class. I invite you guys to do it all over your classes, because when you personalize learn, what you're doing is that your students are realizing they're going to use it, they're realizing they're going to apply it, they're going to be motivated also to do it, right? This personalization tasks and stuff that I'm telling you about, it was taken from the real world and the classroom, developing global skills from other learners, also from Rona Snelling. And well, you know that we know that meaningful learning is very important. However, we need how to make learning meaningful. Now, if you want to see this webinar, of course you're going to be invited to do it, because Rona in this webinar is going to tell you, how to incorporate our students' real life experiences to our classroom to increase their engagement and motivation. Let me see a little bit of the chat, because you have wonderful comments. I just don't have time to read them all, but I think that you are, yeah, also concerning to neuroscience of learning. Thank you very much. Okay, let me move to tip number 6. Okay, let's go to tip number 6, which is use authentic videos to bring other cultures into the classroom. I know you guys, you have been using videos because videos are engaging, because videos create interest, and they are very useful. For functional language, they're very useful to set the scene, to create different aspects of the language, to teach whatever you want to teach, of course, grammar, language, skills, etc. And they can be also used, well, to develop listening skills, of course, visual literacy, also some global skills like awareness of other cultures. Okay, because we can have some videos about other cultures. It's very important for your students to get to know other cultures. Also, authentic videos. Well, what can be more realistic about learning a language, but also to learn from authentic videos that you can find all over the place. This webinar was called Globalizing Students in a Perfect World by Ben Crystal. Okay, so as I was saying, authentic videos are a great way of bringing other cultures into the classroom, to have discussion about the other cultures, to compare and contrast, to compare and contrast how things are in different parts of the world, as we are here from different parts of the world, so we can contrast. For example, let me just tell you something. If I ask you, what did you have for breakfast today, guys? What is a regular breakfast for you guys in your countries? A traditional one. Let me see the chat here. You're going to find things that are really different. So let me ask, what kind of things are traditional? Coffee and milk, mate and facturas. Mate, or I don't know what that is. Tabule, yeah. Coffee, tamales, yes, I also eat tamales here in Mexico. Yogurt and egg, quaker. I've been to Peru and I didn't try the quaker. Avocado, coffee. Okay, all right. So as you could see, there are different bizcochos, wonderful, pan de sal, oatmeal. All right, so as you can see, there are different types of breakfast. Quaker. Quaker, yes, of course, avena, sorry, I didn't understand that. All right, I thought it was a special dish. Okay, Polish cheese coffee. All right, probably I'm a little bit hungry here. So as I was saying, well, authentic videos are a perfect idea to raise awareness on other cultures, and also to develop communication skills, of course. And bread with pork, wonderful. All right, let me go over the seventh tip, which is use thinking skills to be effective in English. This was taken from Teaching Young Adults from Steve Taylor Notes. And well, thinking skills, as you already know enable us to process information, recall facts, and apply knowledge to various situations. If we teach thinking skills, of course, at a higher level, can be problem solving, analysis, especially because we're teaching adults. Okay, I think that this applies perfectly for us, and also it applies for some subjects across the curriculum, which means most, if not all, thinking skills can be transferable to whatever you tell me, other subjects in the curriculum, about other actions in life, right? So the English classroom, I believe it's a perfect place to develop these skills, so we can have discussions, we can state opinions, we can have debates, and well, critical thinking skills will enable students to present their own ideas in a very coherent way, and also analyze and respect other people's opinions, right? So I believe that well, you already know we don't only teach a language, we teach a lot more than a language. And within this learning a second language, we can teach study skills, we can teach life skills, we can teach thinking skills, and we can work on so many aspects of life and of language. And let me go. Okay, you're still talking about breakfast. All right, let me go to tip number 8. Okay, tip number 8 is develop conversational skills to provide learners the confidence they need to express themselves. Okay, and this tip, this was taken also from Roman Snelling, and it was teaching speaking, developing conversational skills. This is the resource, and well, we all need these conversational skills, and they are needed in order to be able to carry out assertive communication. But in this stage, guys, in this adult teaching, it's not just about communicating. It's not just about having your message across and that somebody else is listening and understanding. It's also the basic stuff. But we also need both interlocutors to feel confident, pleasant, and also to have a correct interaction, because according to Rona, there are 6 sub skills, and we teachers we have to work on those sub skills, which are language, fluency, accuracy, phonology, pragmatics, and interpersonal skills. Okay, so if we work with these 6, I'm going to repeat them: language, fluency, accuracy, phonology, pragmatics, and interpersonal skill. So if we work with these 6 sub skills, we're going to help learners acquire the skills they need to develop their speaking, and also to apply it in different fields, different contexts. Okay, they're going to feel confident to produce the language, because as I mentioned before, it's not just to speak and that's it. You know that we have to speak in a different way. It depends on the place we are, it depends who we're talking to, it depends on many aspects. Okay, so I believe that this is essential for adults also, that they understand the type of speaking expressions and the way you address people, stuff like that. So I think that if you want to see this, you should go to this webinar and take a deeper look at it. All right, let me move to tip number 9. In tip number 9, this is called Empower Different Voices in Your Classroom. This was taken from the webinar from Sarina Sofan, and it was called Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, the new kid in town. Okay, so in here, what we're going to see is to reduce the biases and to be more inclusive, something that we already talked about. For example, going one step further and talk about positive effects of inclusion. And also something that I want to tell you about this empowering different voices in your classroom is something that we sometimes do. And I was a teacher for 10 years, now I'm a consultant for 15. So let me tell you that something that I did, something that I see some teachers still do, not because we want, just because that's part of a class. We tend to focus on some students. For example, when we are asking for participation, sometimes we only concentrate on some students. When we when we want our students to give an example or to present something, or when we ask for the homework, or when we're doing a task, or where they're going to do a presentation. Sometimes we only focus on the students that usually raise their hands, on some students that are the ones that are always participating. And one of the tips here is try to include everybody. Remember, there are some students that would not like to talk in public. It's okay. It's okay if they don't talk in public, but you can find ways to make them also participate in class, that they feel confident. Also, we are in charge of promoting a very nice atmosphere. We need to establish a nice atmosphere for our students to feel free to make mistakes, to feel free that they're going to speak the language, try out, and nobody's making fun of them. That's very important. That's essential. For example, that's something that I was very, very careful about when I was a teacher in high school. Nobody would make fun of another person. That was not allowed at all, because otherwise, well, there are some people, if they feel embarrassed, they're not going to try to speak the language. That's a fact. Yeah, let me see the chat a little bit. Every child is unique. Exactly, they have their different abilities, interests. You have time to facilitate the work performance, the pragmatics and context. Okay, very well. Okay, Aaron, let me go to, is it the last tip, guys? Yes, it is the last tip. Okay, tip number 10. All right, tip number 10. I left this one because I really liked it, and I wanted to close with this one. Tip number 10 is called Introduce SDGs, which means Sustainable Development Guidelines, to your learners to provide higher order thinking and more motivation for learning. Okay, you can see this webinar by Harry Waters, and it's called the SDG, as easy as 1, 2, 3. That's the way they were nice. So you can take a look at it, because he's introducing this UNESCO, the UN's 2013 Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, so he's going to tell you, he's going to give you advice and tips on how to introduce these guidelines from the Sustainable Development, and also some materials that you can have ready to work with it. So by understanding these goals and introducing them to our learners, we can create ways of thinking, empathizing with world issues, also to take into account what is happening in the world, which is essential part of living, and we can encourage them also to foster a higher level of thinking, some different thinking skills. There are different tasks that you can do. You can exploit materials, and also you can have them to you for a better understanding of the goals that we're achieving. We can include these guidelines. We can include them in our course books, and we can include them in our programs. And also, something that is very, very important is that we can encourage our students to take action. Okay, not just to get to know these guidelines, but also to take action, also to contribute with some ideas, because, well, we're promoting these goals to increase the knowledge of sustainability, right? So as Harry says, these aren't the answer. He states this, that these goals are not the answer, but they promote and they provide good questions to start with, no? Good questions to do something with our world, to take into account what is happening, and also to make our students aware that they have to know what is going on, and also that they can do something about it. All right. So those are my 10 tips, guys. Thank you very much. And I'm going to share my screen because I want to show you. These are the 10 tips. It just gave you a very short words to describe them, the 10 tips that I just gave you. And here we have, if you want to take a screenshot or something, because the QR codes are the links for the resources that I took them from, okay? The webinars, the articles. So if you want to take just a screenshot or a photo of it, then would be wonderful. So you can just take a look at them later and go deeper into the topics that I just told you about, okay? Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, Will.
Thanks so much, Janzo. That was excellent, absolutely brilliant. Thanks for putting that slide together as well. That's really, really helpful. So that people,
yeah.
I hope they can take a picture. Their phone's not just going to come up with 10 different web pages for them to open. I'm sure they can.
Yeah, just a picture, and then they can go to different links.
Definitely. Thanks a lot, Janzo. I know you've put a lot of work into those tips and to going back all over season 4 and trying to sort of glean some of the best things that you found from it. So really, really appreciate the work that you've done in preparation, and obviously for the amazing delivery as always.
Thanks a lot. I don't know if you have any questions or anything.
We've run out of time, Janzo, if I'm perfectly honest.
Yeah.
We kind of head off if that's all right.
All right.
Is that okay? So I've got a few other things that I wanted to share with everyone. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so those are Janzo's tips that he's just given you. So you can see them. Take a screenshot of that if you want the full sentences of them. I'll keep that up for a second. Okay, that's it. So what you've just seen is a collective of the sort of the best bits, according to the speakers, the best bits of season 4. What we're doing today is actually, you would have noticed actually that they all kind of had a similar thread, a bit of a similar theme academically, in that we're looking at sort of 3 particular areas, kind of 4. So we're looking at global citizenship education, we're looking at diversity, equity and inclusion, and we're looking at sustainability and well-being, which kind of fits within all of it. I suppose they all kind of cross over a little bit, but those themes are what what underpins our new Advancing Futures program, which we have officially opened now. So if you go to macmillanenglish.com/advancing futures, you'll see what Advancing Futures is all about, and rather what it will be. And it's actually going to be an ongoing initiative of Macmillan Education's to help our students become the global citizens that they need to be and the global citizens that they want to be. Not enforcing anything on them, but simply giving them the knowledge, the skills, the attitudes and the tools to take action, to live in a profitable, a successful, a green, a collaborative, creative world now and in their future, via Macmillan Education courses, via the Advancing Learning Program, which you're seeing right now, in sort of spreading that good word and also spreading the how-tos of doing a lot of that stuff. So that's what Advancing Futures is. And one really important way that you can be involved is coming in the next few months. We're going to be launching Changemakers. What Changemakers is, again, it's ongoing. It's an ongoing project for us to connect you with other students and teachers from around the world. So there'll be, for example, a series of activities that we're going to ask people to take part in. Obviously, if you're willing, we can't force anything. We're not going to force anything. But if you're willing to take part in Changemakers, it's a project we're using in order to help people become part of that global stage and step onto the global stage with each other, of course, in the process while learning English. So we really hope you can take part in that. If you follow us on social media, etc., or if you go to that website, you can sign up to be told about this as soon as it launches. But we're just letting you know now that there's something coming, and it's going to be a really, really exciting international collaborative project. So please do look out for that. Here's a little video to give you a taster of what you have to look forward to. towards that final screen, scan that QR code if you want to get informed about that. That's going to be happening in the next few months. Really exciting. I'm extremely excited about it. I can't tell you, I do know more, but I'm not going to say it now because we're not ready to talk about it yet, but we will tell you as soon as we're ready. I hope you're excited as I am.